They say that trust is the foundation of any marriage, but I never expected that my wife's sudden interest in managing our finances would lead her to systematically steal my identity and destroy my credit while building a secret financial empire in my name, ultimately driving me to orchestrate a revenge so comprehensive that it exposed her elaborate fraud and sent her to prison. My name is Patrick, and this is the story of how discovering my wife's identity theft led me to expose her criminal enterprise in the most devastating way possible. My wife Monica and I had been married for 8 years when she expressed interest in taking over the management of our household finances. Monica had always been organized and detail-oriented, so her offer to handle our bills, investments, and financial planning seemed like a natural extension of her skills and a way to reduce my workload. Monica began by taking control of our joint bank accounts, credit cards, and investment portfolios. She organized all of our financial documents, set up online banking systems, and created detailed budgets and spending plans. I was impressed by her thoroughness and grateful for her willingness to handle the tedious aspects of financial management. The transition seemed to go smoothly at first. Monica would provide me with regular updates about our financial situation, showing me statements and reports that indicated our savings were growing and our investments were performing well. She seemed to have a natural talent for financial management and was able to find ways to reduce our expenses and increase our income. As Monica became more involved in our finances, she began to suggest that it would be more efficient for her to handle all of our financial communications and transactions. She offered to be the primary contact for our banks, credit card companies, and investment firms, arguing that having one person manage all communications would reduce confusion and ensure consistency. I agreed to this arrangement because it seemed logical and because Monica had been doing such a good job managing our money. I trusted her completely and appreciated that she was willing to take on the responsibility of dealing with financial institutions and paperwork. However, after several months of Monica's financial management, I began to notice some changes in our lifestyle and spending patterns that seemed unusual. Monica had started making expensive purchases for herself, including designer clothing, jewelry, and luxury items that seemed inconsistent with our budget and financial goals. When I asked Monica about these purchases, she would explain that she had found ways to increase our income through smart investments and careful budgeting, and that we could afford to enjoy some of the fruits of her financial management. She would show me statements and reports that seemed to support her claims about our improved financial situation. Most concerning of all, Monica began to be secretive about certain aspects of our finances. She would receive mail and phone calls related to financial matters that she would handle privately, and she became defensive when I asked questions about specific accounts or transactions. These behaviors seemed inconsistent with the transparency and communication that had characterized our marriage, and I began to feel that Monica was hiding something important from me. However, I trusted her and assumed that her secretiveness was related to surprise investments or financial planning that she wanted to keep confidential until the right time. But as more time passed, I began to receive strange phone calls and mail related to financial accounts and credit applications that I had never opened or authorized. Credit card companies and banks were contacting me about accounts that I had supposedly applied for, and collection agencies were calling about debts that I had never incurred. When I tried to discuss these issues with Monica, she would dismiss them as mistakes or identity theft attempts by strangers, and she would offer to handle the communications with the financial institutions to resolve the problems. She seemed knowledgeable about the issues and confident in her ability to fix them. I decided to conduct my own investigation into these financial irregularities to understand what was happening and to protect our credit and financial security. What I discovered was shocking and revealed the extent of Monica's systematic fraud and identity theft. Monica had been using my personal information to open credit cards, bank accounts, and loans in my name without my knowledge or consent. She had been systematically stealing my identity to create a secret financial empire that she was using to fund her expensive lifestyle and personal investments. The scope of Monica's fraud was staggering. She had opened dozens of credit cards in my name, taken out personal loans and lines of credit, and even applied for mortgages and business loans using my identity and forged documents. She had been using these fraudulent accounts to generate hundreds of thousands of dollars in credit and cash that she was using for her own purposes. Most shocking of all, Monica had been systematically destroying my credit rating and financial reputation through her fraudulent activities. She had been making late payments, defaulting on loans, and accumulating massive debts in my name that were damaging my credit score and creating a financial disaster that would take years to resolve. Monica had also been using sophisticated techniques to hide her fraud from me and from financial institutions. She had been intercepting mail, redirecting phone calls, and using fake addresses and contact information to ensure that I would not receive notifications about the fraudulent accounts she had opened in my name. I realized that Monica's offer to manage our finances had been a calculated strategy to gain access to my personal information and to position herself to commit identity theft on a massive scale. She had been using my trust and our marriage as cover for a criminal enterprise that was destroying my financial future. The most painful aspect of this discovery was understanding that Monica had been systematically betraying me for months while pretending to be a loving and supportive wife. She had been using our intimate relationship and my trust in her to commit crimes that could have destroyed my life and my ability to support our family. I decided that Monica needed to face serious consequences for her criminal behavior and that I needed to protect myself from further fraud and financial damage. I wanted to expose her crimes and ensure that she was held accountable for the massive theft and identity fraud she had committed. The plan I developed was designed to document Monica's fraud, gather evidence of her criminal activities, and work with law enforcement and financial institutions to prosecute her and recover the stolen money. I wanted her to face the full legal consequences of her crimes. Phase 1 involved working with a forensic accountant and identity theft specialist to document the full scope of Monica's fraud and to gather evidence of her criminal activities. I wanted to create a comprehensive record of every fraudulent account, loan, and transaction she had created in my name. Phase 2 involved working with law enforcement to file criminal charges against Monica for identity theft, fraud, and related crimes. I wanted to ensure that she faced serious legal consequences for her systematic criminal behavior. Phase 3 involved working with financial institutions and credit agencies to dispute the fraudulent accounts and transactions, and to begin the process of restoring my credit and financial reputation. Phase 4 was more personal and involved confronting Monica with evidence of her crimes and giving her an opportunity to acknowledge what she had done and to cooperate with efforts to resolve the financial damage she had caused. The final phase involved the legal and practical steps necessary to end our marriage, recover as much of the stolen money as possible, and ensure that Monica could no longer access my personal information or financial accounts. The investigation phase took several weeks, during which I worked with financial experts to trace Monica's fraudulent activities and to document the full scope of her crimes. We were able to identify dozens of fraudulent accounts and transactions, and we calculated that Monica had stolen more than $300,000 through her identity theft scheme. We also gathered evidence showing how Monica had used sophisticated techniques to hide her fraud, including fake addresses, forged documents, and intercepted communications. The evidence showed that her crimes had been carefully planned and executed over many months. Most importantly, we documented the massive damage that Monica's fraud had caused to my credit rating and financial reputation. Her crimes had destroyed my ability to obtain credit, had created enormous debts in my name, and had put me at risk of bankruptcy and financial ruin. The confrontation with Monica happened on a Friday evening in October, exactly 10 months after she had first offered to manage our finances. I had arranged for Monica to come home expecting a normal evening together, but I had prepared a comprehensive presentation of all the evidence I had gathered about her criminal activities. Instead of the quiet evening she expected, I presented Monica with detailed documentation of her identity theft, records of the fraudulent accounts she had opened in my name, and evidence of the massive financial damage she had caused. I also had law enforcement officers waiting outside to arrest her. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. I had financial records showing her fraud, documentation proving her identity theft, and expert analysis showing the systematic nature of her criminal enterprise. I also had evidence of the sophisticated techniques she had used to hide her crimes. Monica's reaction was initially one of shock and panic as she realized that her criminal activities had been discovered and documented in detail. She tried to deny the evidence at first, claiming that I had misunderstood her financial management and that the fraudulent accounts were the result of identity theft by strangers. But the evidence was too comprehensive and specific for her denials to be credible. I had documentation showing not just her fraud, but also her systematic deception, her use of my personal information, and her deliberate efforts to hide her crimes from me and from financial institutions. When Monica realized that denial wasn't working, she changed tactics and tried to justify her fraud by claiming that she had been trying to improve our financial situation and that her crimes had been motivated by love and concern for our family. She suggested that her identity theft had been a misguided attempt to create financial security for us. But I was not interested in Monica's attempts to rationalize her criminal behavior. She had deliberately and systematically stolen my identity, committed massive fraud, and destroyed my financial reputation. She needed to face the full legal consequences of her crimes. That evening, I also revealed that I had been working with law enforcement and that Monica would be arrested and charged with identity theft, fraud, and related crimes. I told her that I planned to pursue both criminal prosecution and civil remedies to recover the money she had stolen and to hold her accountable for the damage she had caused. Monica was devastated to learn that her crimes would result in arrest and prosecution, and that she would face serious legal penalties, including potential prison time. She begged me to handle the matter privately and suggested that she could repay the stolen money and resolve the financial problems without involving law enforcement. But I had already made the decision that Monica's crimes were too serious for private resolution and that she needed to face the full legal consequences of her systematic fraud and identity theft. Her criminal behavior had been too extensive and damaging for me to consider any alternative to prosecution. The legal consequences for Monica were swift and severe. She was arrested that evening and charged with multiple counts of identity theft, fraud, wire fraud, and related crimes. The evidence I had gathered provided clear documentation of her criminal enterprise, making it impossible for her to contest the charges or claim innocence. Monica was also required to face civil lawsuits for the financial damage she had caused, and she was ordered to pay restitution for the money she had stolen and the costs of repairing the damage to my credit and financial reputation. Most importantly, Monica's criminal conviction resulted in a prison sentence that reflected the serious nature of her crimes and the massive financial damage she had caused. The court recognized that her systematic identity theft and fraud had been particularly egregious because it had involved exploiting her marriage and her husband's trust. The process of recovering from Monica's crimes was long and difficult, but I was eventually able to restore my credit rating and financial reputation with the help of identity theft specialists and financial institutions. The criminal conviction provided the documentation needed to dispute the fraudulent accounts and to remove the negative information from my credit reports. Most importantly, I was able to recover a significant portion of the money that Monica had stolen through her fraud. Her assets were seized and liquidated to pay restitution, and I was able to reclaim much of the financial security that her crimes had destroyed. The experience taught me valuable lessons about the importance of maintaining oversight of personal finances and being skeptical of offers to handle financial management, even from trusted family members. I learned that identity theft can be committed by people who have intimate access to personal information and that trust must be balanced with verification. Looking back on this experience, I am proud of the way I handled the discovery of Monica's crimes. I could have confronted her immediately when I first became suspicious, but instead I took the time to gather comprehensive evidence that exposed the full scope of her criminal enterprise. The marriage that I had thought was built on love and mutual support had actually been exploited by Monica as cover for a massive criminal enterprise. But the process of exposing her crimes had also revealed my own strength and resilience, and it had prepared me to build a new life based on financial security and personal integrity. Monica's identity theft and fraud had been interconnected crimes that had both violated my trust and threatened my financial future. She had been willing to exploit our marriage and my personal information to commit crimes that could have destroyed my life and my ability to support myself. The revenge I orchestrated against Monica was comprehensive and devastating, but it was also necessary to protect my interests and ensure that justice was served. She had chosen to build her criminal enterprise on stolen identity and fraudulent accounts, and she had to face the full legal consequences of her choices. The financial records that had enabled Monica's fraud had also provided the evidence that exposed her crimes and led to her conviction. The irony was not lost on me that the very accounts she had used to steal my identity had also documented her criminal activities and provided the proof needed to send her to prison. In the end, Monica's elaborate criminal scheme had achieved the opposite of what she had intended. Instead of creating financial security and luxury for herself, her crimes had ultimately cost her everything, including her freedom, and had resulted in serious criminal penalties and financial ruin. The most important outcome of this entire experience was that I was able to reclaim my identity and my financial security from Monica's criminal enterprise. I was no longer living under the threat of her fraud and theft, and I was free to build a new financial future based on honesty and legal behavior. The evidence that had exposed Monica's crimes served as a reminder that criminal behavior ultimately leaves traces that can be discovered and documented. Her careful planning and sophisticated techniques had ultimately been no match for thorough investigation and forensic analysis. Monica learned that crimes built on identity theft and fraud come with consequences that extend far beyond the immediate financial gain they are meant to provide. She lost her freedom, her reputation, and her ability to participate in normal society. She discovered that the trust and love of her husband, once broken through systematic criminal behavior, could not be repaired or replaced. Her crimes had destroyed not just our marriage, but also her relationships with friends and family members who were shocked by her criminal activities. The revenge was complete, justice was served, and I was finally free to build a new life based on the values of honesty and integrity that Monica had abandoned. I had won not just a legal victory in the criminal prosecution and civil proceedings, but a personal victory that validated my commitment to truth and accountability in relationships. Looking forward, I carried with me the lessons I had learned about the importance of maintaining financial oversight, the dangers of identity theft from trusted individuals, and the need to investigate suspicious financial activities rather than accepting explanations at face value. The experience had been financially devastating and emotionally traumatic, but it had also been educational and ultimately liberating. I had learned that I was capable of handling systematic criminal behavior with strategic thinking and appropriate legal action, and I had proven to myself that I would not tolerate fraud and theft even when committed by someone I loved. Monica's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of using marriage and trust to commit identity theft and fraud, and about the way that criminal behavior ultimately destroys not just the victims it is meant to exploit, but the character and freedom of the people who choose crime over honesty. Her conviction and imprisonment served as a reminder that exploiting personal relationships and intimate access to commit financial crimes is ultimately unsustainable and self-destructive, and that criminal behavior ultimately destroys not just the marriages it is meant to exploit, but the freedom and future of the people who choose fraud over legitimate financial management. The financial accounts that had been meant to represent our shared economic partnership had instead become the tools of Monica's criminal enterprise and the evidence I needed to expose her crimes and reclaim my future. In the end, the revenge was not just about recovering the money Monica had stolen or exposing her fraud. It was about vindicating the principles of honesty, financial integrity, and marital trust that she had abandoned, and about proving that criminal behavior will ultimately be discovered and punished. The marriage that Monica had destroyed through her crimes was replaced by a new understanding of what genuine financial partnerships should look like, built on transparency, mutual respect, and shared commitment to honesty in all financial dealings. Her betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been educational, and I was determined to use those lessons to build better relationships in the future based on the values that truly mattered to me. Monica's identity theft and fraud, and the elaborate criminal enterprise she had constructed to exploit our marriage, had ultimately cost her everything that should have mattered to her: her freedom, her reputation, and her standing in the community. The financial records that exposed her crimes and the forensic evidence that documented her fraud served as permanent reminders that criminal behavior has a way of revealing itself, no matter how carefully people try to hide their crimes behind marriage and trust. The revenge was complete, justice was served, and I was finally free to move forward with my life, knowing that I had handled one of the most sophisticated forms of financial crime with dignity, strategic thinking, and unwavering commitment to truth and legal accountability.